I still, still won't be tall enough. Good.
Everybody good? Everybody live streaming?
Yeah.
Just a couple things before we begin. A couple questions that might come. No update per se on the condition of the individual still at East End, and no charges have been placed at this time. With that, we'll open it up to questions. I know you all have a video. We'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, I mean, I gave a statement the other day, so I think we'll just go to questions. So de-escalation is a part of the use of force policy, and members, before resorting to force, should take every action possible to de-escalate a situation. When we watch the body camera video, we look at this situation. The officers encountered Mr. Thomas in the stairwell, who produced a very large knife. The officers exited the building. They walked backwards. And keep in mind that under New York State law, police officers have no obligation to retreat, and the first thing these officers did was retreat. They backed out of the building. Mr. Thomas continued down the stairs and eventually worked his way to the door. The officers closed the front door in another effort to create some time distance and working towards cover. Mr. Thomas kept coming towards them, and they continued to retreat again, which is de-escalation. When you look in the body camera video, we have approximately 35 times where the officers had pleaded with Mr. Thomas to drop the knife. They said it in a very calm tone. Nobody escalated their voice. Nobody was screaming at him. Nobody was yelling at him. Nobody was swearing to drop the knife, which can become an adrenaline type of situation. They all remain very calm. So, they're taught de-escalation in the academy. We have our de-escalation training here in the department, and then it's also part of the use of force policy.
How do you handle situations in which someone is known to police for having a mental health issue? Do you say, okay, before we engage with this person, we know this person, we know they have a mental health issue, maybe we should take X, Y, and Z steps?
So I think you have to separate situations. Is someone known to police and who, or is someone known to an individual police officer? Did any one of those officers have prior contact with Mr. Thomas? I haven't seen that any of those individual officers have. You also have to look at how the call was dispatched. The call came in from Mr. Thomas stating someone was trying to kill him. Is it a domestic? Is it a neighbor trouble? Is it, any other situation? They were going there on a threats call. They did not go there with the advantage of knowing that it was a mental health call. Had they done that, then maybe there would have been, some other type of tactic, although in that particular situation, the way they responded, I don't think the tactics would have changed. They encountered him in the hallway, they kept their distance from him, and they retreated and backed out of the building. So it's a tough question to answer based on how that call went out and based on when we say known to police. When I say known to police, it's police reports, it's actions of our department versus the individual officer who might be on scene who may or may not have had prior involvement with an individual.
So did those officers know about this history or no?
To my knowledge, I don't know that. I don't believe so. To my knowledge, I'm not aware that they did.
Commissioner, I think one of the things that a lot of people, when they see those videos and they hear the gunshots, they ask themselves, they ask people like you, why so many shots? Why? So I guess I ask the question on behalf of the public, why so many shots?
If you look at the situation and when the shots were fired, you're looking at probably less than 2 seconds. The officers are taught to shoot to stop the threat. You have an individual that is into a full stride, a full sprint, carrying a very large knife. You know, a lot of adrenaline is at play on the part of the individual who is going through that mental health crisis, or, you know, in any other situation. And it doesn't mean that they're going to stop on the first or second hit. And you have to look at these situations and how rapidly they escalate. So this occurred very, very fast.
Can you talk about the officer after the fact? He was obviously very distraught about what he had to do, and his partners asked him to, you know, go in the car and kind of take a minute. Have you talked to that officer and you know?
I have not personally spoken to the officers. I have conveyed messages through various other means to them. He was, and they all were, very emotionally distraught. You know, that's about one of the worst things, if not the worst thing, that you can encounter in your career. Thank God the vast majority of police officers are not in that situation, but it's very clear in that video. He's very upset. They tried in vain to bring that call to a successful conclusion by getting that individual to the hospital for medical treatment, for a mental health evaluation. And that's evident by the fact that they called an ambulance before it got to that point, knowing that that was going to turn into a transport to the hospital for a mental health evaluation. You know, by calling for that ambulance ahead of time turned out after the fact to be helpful, because it was already en route prior to when the shots were fired.
If this was a video that was used in a training exercise, as the commissioner of BPD, what would you say? The officers did the right thing? Is this a textbook case of what they should do in this case? Is there anything they could have done differently?
I hate to say the right thing, because it was tragic on all counts. It's tragic for everybody. It's tragic for the officers. It's tragic for Mr. Thomas. Thank God he survived. It's tragic for his family. I think they did everything that they could have done. This situation, when you look at the video that we sent out, was 3.5 minutes long. It was rapidly unfolding. They tried everything they could, again, by calmly speaking with them. How can we help you? What can we do to help you? Please let us help you. We don't want to do this. I don't know what you could have done in that situation. I think, you know, Mr. Thomas in his mental health crisis, you know, it appears in that video that you know, he had one thing on his mind, and unfortunately, it appears that that's what came to fruition.
The department has access to mobile ramp. You guys have presented that and showed that off. What is the accessibility of that? Do they have utilized that on Monday morning? How difficult or easy is it to deploy it? Can you talk a little more about that?
So the bowler wrap, we have 10 of those in use by our behavioral health team. They're assigned to the behavioral health team. You know, could it have been successfully used? Maybe. I'm not going to, you know, Monday morning quarterback that either. It's a scenario where it could have been in play, but the behavioral health team was not there. They were not working at that time. You know, I think, again, how rapidly that situation unfolded. I don't know that they would have even been able to get there in that kind of time frame, because the call was not dispatched as a mental health call. You know, the tasers, the same thing. We're working very aggressively to get those out through the first 2 weeks that we have began the training for tasers. We have approximately 170 officers out of a 730-plus member department, and not all those members of the 730-plus will be assigned tasers given their assignment, but it's a 10-hour training. It's a big lift to get that training done. They are in all 5 districts, and as soon as everyone goes through the training, then they are carrying them.
Can you confirm that the body camera was worn by Officer Michael Ramos?
Yes.
Is there a reason why the other officers didn't fire, or did that particular officer was just closer to?
Well, there were 2 officers that discharged their weapons, and you know, part of that, you have to remember, you're out in a residential setting where you also have officers that could be downrange. You have to. There's a lot that goes into that situation. You have to recognize that you know, the person that you're engaging. You also have to look at what's behind you. You've got homes behind you, and the way that they were coming and the way the officers were, another officer could have recognized that there was another police officer on downrange on there. So, you know, the officers that I would presume, given where they were, that felt that they were the most engaged, did what they had to do and discharged their weapons. It's absolutely, you know, nothing against the officers that didn't, My guess is that they evaluated the situation of where they were at the time that they were at, and it was not safe for them to discharge their weapons.
Commissioner, I know tasers are becoming, part
Well, they're here, they're out.
All right, would they have made a difference?
Again, maybe. I'm not going to say they would. I'm not going to say they wouldn't. Would I like to have a taser in that situation? Absolutely. Would I like to have an opportunity to bowler wrap in this situation? Absolutely. That's why the city has invested the amount of money that they have in these less lethal options. The fact remains that we had to operate with what we had at the time. Those officers in D District on that midnight shift have not yet received the training. There are set times for the training. I said we're rapidly pushing that training out, and we're going to, it takes a while to train hundreds of officers in the department, but all 5 districts have tasers out in use, and as soon as they are trained, the individual officer, they will be carrying the taser.
What was the body camera footage that was released? Is there other footage available, or is this just the best angle that you guys chose to put out?
That was the best angle that we chose. We felt that, in looking at the other ones, that showed everything the best, and it captured everything in that scene.
Why not release all of it?
I think we released this pretty quick. I think this is the first use of force video that this police department has released. We wanted to get it out in a timely fashion. It takes a bit of time to put this together. You have to do some redactions. We want to redact out the individual, the subject, redact out his face. There's time that goes into this, so it's something that we're going to be working on and getting better as we go forward. So there were other officers that immediately moved in. If you'll see in the video, a police car was coming eastbound on Hertel. One of the officers' primary concern for him at that time was to make sure that police car saw them where they were. We have an injured individual laying in the street. We did not want him getting run over by a police car. We didn't want any of the officers, so he worked on making sure that was handled while other officers immediately moved in, started assessing the wounds. They got on the radio, they stepped up the ambulance and called for the fire department. As I said before, they had previously called for the ambulance. They changed the status of that call to elevate the response.
Anyone else? How many officers encountered Thomas in the stairway and then in the immediate vicinity of the front lawn?
And looking at the video, I believe there were 4 officers in the stairwell. I might be wrong. I didn't get into counting how many officers were there. There were, it looked like, I don't know, maybe at least, 6 or so officers on scene. I didn't get into counting how many were there.
Only 2 fired.
2 fired their weapons, yes. As per our policy, they're on leave, and again, we're also concerned about, their well-being and how they're doing, and this is a very traumatic situation, and we want to make sure that they're looked after, that they're doing okay, and we don't want them to come back, too prematurely. We don't want to leave them out too long. So, we're going to go through that process and make sure that that they feel supported by the department and that they're comfortable.
Is there an internal investigation still happening?
There will always be an internal investigation. There's an internal, and of course, the district attorney's office is investigating as well. I do not know how many. I did not get a count. I didn't look into the exact number.
Anything else? We all good?
What's the value of having that kind of footage?
I think it's, I'll call it immeasurable. It's tremendous. It takes us from the days of, just taking statements and, looking for other avenues of the investigation to we get a firsthand look at it. It's tremendous, and I think that's why police departments across the country are investing millions and millions of dollars in body camera technology. We can see what happened. It's, we don't want a Monday morning quarterback a situation when I come into work the next day and, I want to be able to see firsthand what happened, as do our investigators, as does the district attorney's office, and as does the community.
Anyone else? Thank
Good.
you.
All right, thank you.